Good evening, class. This video is going to talk about uh, the chemical methods of birth control as well as surgical methods of birth control. And then later on, I'll talk about some of the social and societal benefits of using birth control. All right, so first we'll start off with chemical methods of birth control. And as the name implies, this method is going to be using chemicals to achieve contraception. Okay, so the three that I'll talk about is the morning after pill, the combined pills, and then we'll talk about spermicide. Okay, so first I'll start off with talking about the morning after pill. Okay, so with the morning after pill, this is referred to as an emergency contraceptive. So basically, uh, if a person was to have unprotected sex and they feel as though uh, they need extra protection in order to prevent pregnancy, they have the option of using the morning after pill. With the morning after pill, they have to take this pill within 72 hours. And this pill basically has artificial hormones inside of it that is going to prevent the occurrence of pregnancy. But with this pill here, is not typically a contraceptive method a person would use often. It's only supposed to be used in emergency situations. So, for example, if someone was using another contraceptive method, like a condom, for example, and that was broken, or then they have this option of using the morning after pill to basically, uh, you know, make it unlikely that they would become pregnant. Okay, so this is more like a precautionary measure. It's not a regular birth control in the sense that you would use something like this on a day-to-day basis. Because the reason why is because these pills are they basically have a very high dosage of artificial hormones. And these artificial hormones are basically going to prevent pregnancy from occurring by a number of mechanisms, which would be that one, it can stop the fertilized egg from implanting itself. Okay, so if there's no implantation, pregnancy will not occur. And another way how these emergency or morning after pills work is that it can also make the cervical mucus too thick so that sperm will not be able to enter the cervix. Okay, so that's how this method of birth control is going to work. It has a very high dosage of artificial hormones, and these hormones are going to prevent implantation from occurring, or it's also going to prevent sperm from reaching those eggs or the egg, the single egg. So that's basically what the morning after pill does. And like I said, it's called an emergency contraceptive. It has to be used within 3 days of sex so that it'll be effective. Okay, so there's a 3 day window that someone can use this if they want it to be effective. But like I said, this is an emergency contraceptive. So a person would usually only use this if one of the other contraceptive methods would have failed. All right. So the next one we'll talk about are the combined pills. Now, with the combined birth control pills, these ones are going to be more effective because the pills, uh, basically what happens is that it's a packet of pills that a person would take over the course of a month. So with this picture here, this right here is basically showing the combined birth control pills. All right, it's gonna have between 21 pills or it may have 28 pills. And the intention is that a person would take one of these pills every single day at the same time of the day for the course of the month in order for this medication to be effective. Okay, and with this birth control pill, it also has the same artificial hormones inside of it. The reason why it's called a combined pill is because it has a combination of of artificial progesterone and estrogen. Now, the way how these pills work is that they're going to prevent the menstrual cycle or ovulation from happening. So it's going to stop the eggs inside the ovaries from developing into a mature egg, which would then ovulate and then, be released from the ovaries into the fallopian tube. So combined birth control pills, the artificial hormones inside of them, they're going to stop uh, eggs from maturing, and it's also going to stop ovulation from happening. Okay, so that's how this birth control pill is going to work. It works by basically stopping a mature egg from ever being created. And if you have no egg, then fertilization cannot occur. All right. Okay, so that's it for the combined birth control pill. Next, we have spermicides. Now, with spermicides, these are just chemicals that destroy sperm. That's the main way how these pills, not pills, sorry, how this cream is going to work. Now, with the spermicide, usually this would be used with another contraceptive method, such as uh, using, I guess, condoms. So basically, it's an extra precautionary step to make the condoms even more effective. But with spermicide, it wouldn't be advised for someone to just use spermicide as their main method of contraception because it wouldn't be as effective. Spermicide does kill sperm, but you shouldn't just rely on this method alone as a contraceptive. So usually people would use this with another contraceptive method such as condoms and such as the diaphragm cap that we would have talked about earlier. Okay, so yeah, that's it for the chemical methods of birth control. Uh, like I said, they use chemicals to prevent pregnancy. In the case with birth control pills, they're using artificial hormones that are going to affect the female in a number of ways. With the morning after pill, it prevented implantation and it also prevented sperm from traveling into the cervix. And with the combined pills, it stopped the development of the egg so that ovulation doesn't occur. Now, with these chemical methods, they do have some disadvantages, uh, particularly with the birth control pills. Uh, they can cause blood clots to occur, okay, and that could potentially be lethal. So, a blood clot is basically when a clot is going to form inside the blood. A clot is basically a collection of platelets, and they have the ability to clog different arteries and stuff like that. Okay, so with a blood clot, if a blood clot was to get lodged into the brain or a certain part of the heart, it can cause either a heart attack or it can cause a stroke. It would cause a stroke if it went to the brain. I mean, it would cause a heart attack if a blood clot was to go to the heart. So basically, like I said, it's going to clog the artery. That's going to cut off the blood flow, and that's going to cause that tissue to start to die, and that can be potentially fatal. So that's one of the negative effects of birth control in some women. But for the majority of the cases, majority of the people are not going to have that side effect. There's only a minority of people who would be affected by the blood clots. Okay, next we'll talk about surgical methods. When it comes to surgical methods, there's going to be two. With males who have vasectomies, and in females who have tubal ligation, also called, the tubes being tied off. Okay, so with the surgical methods, surgery is going to be used to basically cause the person to become infertile. So with vasectomies, the sperm duct is going to be severed, and because the sperm duct is severed, even though the testes or the testicles are creating sperm, these sperm have no way of getting into the urethra. So that basically makes it impossible or nearly impossible, practically impossible for that male to produce sperm during sex. So because there's no sperm, pregnancy will not occur. In the case with females with tubal ligation, basically the tubes are either being blocked or they're going to be severed. And because the fallopian tubes are severed, then that means that whenever the ovary creates an egg, these eggs will not be able to become fertilized because that path is blocked off. There's no way for these eggs to basically come into contact with sperm. And because you have no eggs being fertilized by sperm, once again, pregnancy will not occur. Now, with these surgical methods, these methods are probably going to be the most effective ones compared to other contraception methods because it basically makes the person completely infertile. And yeah, so as a long-term solution for having some type of contraceptive, the surgical method would basically be useful in a scenario like that. Now, with the surgical method, uh, sometimes these surgeries can be reversed. So, for example, if someone just didn't want to have kids, say in their 20s, and they decided to reverse it, once they get older, then that would be an option. I think that's possible with vasectomies. But sometimes, certain surgical methods, they may also have a permanent effect. So it's not necessarily a guaranteed that a person fertility would return to them. So that's a risk when it comes to surgical methods. Potentially it could be irreversible, but sometimes it can also be permanent. And in the case where it's permanent, then that person would basically not be able to have children again. Okay, so that's it for all the different contraceptive methods. All right, next I'll be talking about the benefits of birth control. First, I'll talk about the social benefits or how it benefits people at an individual level. And next, I'll talk about the societal benefits. So basically, how birth control is going to positively impact society as a whole. Okay, so we'll talk about the social benefits of having birth control. All right, so when it comes to raising kids, it can be very demanding. It requires a lot of finances, it requires a lot of physical work, and it also requires emotional maturity. So if a person is in a place where either they're not ready to start balancing these three things, or if they're in a position where they would like to focus on other aspects of their life, obviously birth control might be a huge benefit for them. Okay, so for example, if someone was to just get out of high school, they're still in a position where they're trying to figure out their career, pursue some type of trade, and having children at that time may not be in their best interest because they may not be able to balance having a child as long as pursuing those other ventures. Okay, so birth control would be highly beneficial to a person in a position like that. Or you may have a scenario where you already have two adults, they're already parents, they're married or was not, they have a child or they may have two kids, and they wouldn't want to have another third or fourth child because that would put more financial strain on them. Okay, so basically birth control gives people the ability to choose, when they want to have kids, because having children is, well, taking care of children is not necessarily an easy task. You have to learn how to balance your finances, you have to have the emotional maturity, and you have to be willing to put in that physical work to take care of all of those kids. Okay, so we're having children, that's going to come with a lot of more chores such as cooking, cleaning, uh, getting them ready for school, different stuff like that. And a person might not have the the time, or they're not willing to sacrifice that time yet, you know, at that time in their life. So birth control will basically give them that ability to choose. Okay, so here's a list that shows all of the social benefits of using birth control. Like I said, children can be expensive. The parents might want to pursue an education or career at that time in their life. And even though, you know, having kids doesn't make that impossible, it's just going to make it a little bit more challenging. All right. Three, the parents might not be emotionally ready. So in this scenario, you may have someone who is very, very young and they don't have the emotional maturity to become a parent yet. Let's see. Fourth, yeah, parenting large families can be physically demanding. And with this point right here, okay, so with this fourth point here, where it says the process of childbirth requires a lot of medical care. Basically, uh, whenever childbirth occurs, that's going to have some type of demand on that hospital. They're going to need a certain amount of doctors. They're going to need a certain amount of nurses. They're going to need a certain amount of different medications and stuff like that. And that entire process can be very expensive, especially if it's a public hospital and, you know, the government have to basically, I guess, cover all of the expenses. So if birth control is available to people, that'll basically make it a little bit more affordable for the government, because now you won't have a scenario where you have a high volume of people being pregnant, you know, at any given moment. So because birth control is an option, that basically will lower the pressure that's placed on the medical industry. All right, next we'll talk about societal benefits. When it comes to societal benefits of birth control, all this is basically going to center around population and how, you know, having a large population of people is going to have more, well, exert more pressure on the environment as well as the economy, as well as food and space. Okay, so the first thing we'll talk about is how having a large population of people can affect food supply. Obviously, the larger the population is, the more food you will need to keep those people fed. That's also going to require a certain amount of land, because you need land in order to grow this food in the first place, whether this is livestock farming or whether you are doing agriculture and planting plants. Okay, so if you have a large population of people, you're going to need more food and you're also going to need more land. However, if your society has, you know, access to birth control, it's going to alleviate some of that pressure on, you know, food supply as well as the amount of land needed. Okay, so basically it's going to alleviate food shortages as well as land shortages. All right, next we'll talk about how having, you know, a large population of people, that's also going to put a lot of demand on natural resources such as fossil fuel, wood, and water, to name a few. So the larger population you have, the more demand there's going to be for those natural resources. Therefore, if you have birth control, that's going to decrease, you know, the population size, and that's going to basically alleviate the pressure on natural resources. All right, the third point I'm going to talk about is unemployment. If you have a large population of people, it's going to be harder to find a job for all of those people to have. So basically, you know, it's expected that you would have higher unemployment rates in places that have a very large population of people. And another thing that happens, you know, in situations like that is that it can also lower the wages that these persons might get paid. Okay, so a good example of this is China, for example, you know, where all of our electronics are basically assembled, as well as our clothing and different stuff like that. The reason why, you know, we send these different resources over there so that people over there can make is because their wages are very low. If you have a high population of people, you're going to have a certain amount of unemployment, and then people will basically be willing to do a job for a lower wage. So by having a very large population of people, it's going to increase unemployment, and it's also going to lower their wage, because when you have high unemployment, it puts people in a position where, they could offer a job to a certain amount of people, and this person might be willing to do it, for a less amount. So that's basically going to cause the wages to drop. Okay. In addition to wages decreasing, that's also going to lower their standard of living, because now you have a high population of people, you have high unemployment, you have low wages. And if there's low wages, then these people are not really making a lot of money. So that's going to lower their standard of living. Okay, so when it comes to lower standard of living, you might find areas might not have, proper sanitation. They might be in a place in India, for example, where in certain regions, people have to use latrines, or they basically have to use the bathroom outside. And that's basically going to cause a sanitation issue. Okay, so that can also cause uh, the spread of different diseases such as cholera. And yeah, it just basically makes the environment a lot less healthy. It's going to make the environment unhealthy. Okay, so to sum up all of those different benefits when it comes to having birth control available to society, it's going to alleviate all of these things here. It's going to alleviate food shortages. It's going to alleviate land shortage. It's going to decrease the demand on natural resources. And it's also going to alleviate, the unemployment rate and potentially low wages, and it's also going to alleviate a low standard of living. So in places where you find a very large population, where the population is basically too big, it's going to put a certain amount of pressure on the economy. And if there's a lot of pressure on the economy, basically they'll fall subject to all of these ills here. You may have, food shortages, land shortages, a lower standard of living, a high rate of unemployment, and potentially lower wages. So by having birth control available, the population is going to be smaller, and it's going to basically alleviate all these different problems right here. All right, so that's it for contraception. Here are a number of questions that you guys can answer, and you can email this to me, or you could send your responses to it in WhatsApp.